Fox News has a story today. Today is what? Supposed to be Transgender Awareness Day or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Something
is
like
that correct?
Yeah. It's actually, Blinken tweeted it out. Just also throw in the mix here, Clay, that as of April 11th, U.S. citizens will be able to select X as their gender marker on passports. So now it's going
crazy.
Official federal documents. You can go non-gender.
Well, doesn't that seem like a potential security issue to not have to note your sex on your
of
gender?
Course.
I mean,
it makes it. It certainly makes it easier to engage in fraud and to use passports for people who aren't supposed to use them. But beyond that, it is in addition, I should say, it is Transgender Day of Visibility. That's the day today.
That is what it is called today. All right, so Fox News has got a story up, and as I read this, it got more and more crazy to me. Biden administration endorses this is the headline, endorses transgender youth sex change operations, top surgery, hormone therapy. The White House is encouraging gender reassignment surgery, puberty blockers, hormone therapy for transgender minors. And I just want to say this. And I'm trying to think how to say it in a way that is succinct, so I'm going to do my best. It's child abuse, in my opinion, to change the gender of a minor. The idea that you would be removing and changing the sex, the genitals of a 12-year-old is completely indefensible madness, period. Okay? I've got 3 kids. Anyone out there who has kids, think about, if you don't have kids, think about in your own life. How rational are young kids when it comes to making major life choices? Buck, we don't allow kids under 21 to buy a beer legally. And we are going to allow minors to decide what gender they are and to have sex change operations? It's
actually worse than that, Clay, because they're really advocating for this, meaning that you're supposed to celebrate this. The whole point of the Biden administration putting out these papers is so that everyone knows when a 12-year-old or a 10-year-old now says, I think I'm a girl when they're a boy, the response is supposed to be, great, now let's talk about how we can give you gender-changing hormone therapy, as well as you pointed out, top therapy, which is, let's be very clear about this, the removal of healthy female breast tissue. When we're talking about the bottom therapy, it is the removal of healthy male genitalia in the case of transitioning to a woman. I'm just going to say this, there is a psychological condition. It does exist. It is in the literature where people believe that they should not have a limb that they do, and they want it to be surgically removed. Now, we recognize that. When someone says, I shouldn't have this left arm, we recognize that as mental illness. No doctor is going to say, I will put you under anesthesia and remove your healthy left arm. Let's be very clear. When you're talking about some of the therapies for minors that the Biden administration is putting out here, you are removing healthy tissue, you are engaged in mutilation of a healthy body, and the long-term consequences. This is on the NIH. I'm not on crazy right-wing, doesn't approve of trans.com or something. This is on the NIH right now, Clay. As a consequence of pharmacological treatment received by patients who have transitioned, there are unintended systemic changes that may occur. These include increased cardiovascular risk in both trans women and trans men, significant increase of body mass index, a lot of weight gain, and systolic and diastolic blood pressure in trans men, osteoporosis at the lumbar spine and distal arm in trans women. Adverse effects include venous thromboembolism, fractures, cardiovascular disease, stroke, and hormone-dependent cancers. Those are for adult trans patients, the risks that they put out there. Think about this. Now, and that's based on, this is just pharmacological treatment. This isn't even the removal of like male gonads, for example. This isn't even the stuff they're talking about. They want to do this to kids, Clay?
it's child abuse. And look, if you reach the age of majority and you decide that you want to pay to be the gender that is different than the one that you were born from, that is your choice, right? But if you're doing it to a 10-year-old and we're going to allow this to happen, it's child abuse. It shouldn't be permitted. And I would just come back again and again to the reason why we even have ages of majority and ages of minority is because we believe until you reach the age of 18, you aren't even responsible for the choices that you make. That's why we have juvenile courts, because you may make the decision to rob a convenience store when you're 14, and we don't want that judgment, that error that you made, to stick with you for the rest of your life. We believe that by the time you become an adult, you can make a different choice. The idea that we would allow this to occur at all, the idea that there are doctors that would do this, that there are parents that would do this, it's pure madness. This is. I mean, and it's madness to me that it exists. The fact that a president and his political party would be advocating for it, I don't understand. I mean, Buck, what percentage of Americans do you, I mean, because this is what I look at it, I don't even understand. There's no way that Joe Biden actually believes this, right? Let's start here. Joe Biden, there's no way that he believes that a 10-year-old should have surgery. I mean, he's 78
Joe Biden's
years
never
old.
really believed anything.
Any of this stuff.
He does whatever the Democrat Party wants him to do. But yes, you're right. As a person, if you pushed him aside and asked him, no way.
Chance. I mean, I would love for Joe Biden to get asked the question about the Penn transgender swimmer, which I haven't seen him asked. There's no way that he, as I believe he's a sports fan, there's no way that he agrees with that. But to think that a 10-year-old and to think that a major American political party could put this out and be endorsing it, I can't imagine that there's more than 15 or 20% of Americans that would even countenance this. It makes me sick to even think about this happening to a 10-year-old.
It's the hard left, but they run the party now, unfortunately. They run the Democrat Party. They call the shots within the Democrat Party, which is why we're seeing a Biden administration that is so just disastrous in its results, because there's an irrational cabal of leftists that are really the ones who actually push this party. And by the way, it's not just elected officials. It's activists. It's media entities. It's social media companies. But Clay, look at what's gone on even just in the last couple of weeks. Suddenly, there's this enormous outcry against preventing teachers in Florida from talking about trans and gender affirmation and sexuality and all that stuff for kindergartners. And we're not exaggerating. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade. There's a huge outcry from the left about this. And they have to say the Don't Say Gay bill, which is just, that's not even a thing. It doesn't exist. But they're trying to strike it down. They're trying to attack it and everybody who supports it, including the 52% of Democrats in the state of Florida who support it, by the way.
Yes.
52% of Democrats in the polling. But when you look also then at what happened with Disney, they came out against it. And then you had people giving speeches for the all hands. Everybody in Disney is supposed to watch this video, I suppose, where they're hearing the chief content officer, the president of content, say that she has a pansexual and transgender child, one of each child, and how they want to push this ideology on children. They want this to be something that your kids, when they're watching cartoons, are being programmed in. And then today, the Biden administration releases documents encouraging gender reassignment surgery and hormone treatments for minors, specifically for kids, for teenagers, for preteens. How can you not see this, right? And how can you not put all these things together and say, there really is an agenda here to brainwash children and use them as pawns in this trans agenda that the left has adopted wholesale. I have friends, I was talking about this before, Clay, I have friends in the gay and lesbian community who are seeing this and they're saying, what is going on here? It's all trans now. Everything from the left is about the trans agenda.
You're right.
It's all about transgenderism. There's not even and the entities, the organizations that used to be about equal rights for gays, equal rights for lesbians, that's now all fallen away. They're all in on this trans agenda, and specifically for kids. And if you even talk about some of the long-term effects, if you do a study of rapid onset gender dysphoria, which was the term used in that Brown University study of little kids who around other transgender kids suddenly become much more likely to be transgender by a massive percentage and proportion. Maybe that's because kids are impressionable and don't have a framework of judgment, to your point about who's a minor and why we have the laws we do. And the left wants to go after and say, oh, you're 12, you think you're a woman? Let's actually do bottom and top surgery, put you on hormone therapy, and hope we haven't ruined your life. By the way, sterility is another huge risk from these procedures.
Of course. And I just come back to, let's think about the choices that we allow minors to make. You can't buy a beer until you're 21. In theory, you can't buy a ticket to an R-rated movie, I think, until you're 18. You can't serve in the military until you're 18 years old. You can't buy a gun. You can't even rent a car till what, Buck? You're like 25? You can't drive a car till you're 16. And we're going to let a 10-year-old decide to have their genitals removed? Just think about this. I mean, for everybody out there driving around, everybody starting, I mean, this is a position that is utterly indefensible. Again, if you are of age, if you are 18 or older, you want to make that choice, I think that you should have the right to make that choice. There can be all sorts of debates about that for adults. People can have different opinions on that. I don't understand how there is any other opinion other than this is child abuse when it comes to 10-year-olds removing body parts to try to make them another gender.
And it's essentially a part of a children can determine this because they want to make it seem as though this is children are born a certain way and need to have affirmation. It used to be gender transition. Now they call it gender affirmation. And so the younger the affirmations are occurring, the more it seems as though this isn't a psychological condition or choice, which, by the way, the only basis for this is psychological, right? They're not talking about gender transitioning people who are born intersex. That's not the discussion or debate. The Biden White House put this out today. They're doubling down on this agenda right now, given all we've seen with Disney and the bill in Florida and everything else. Tells you a lot, folks.
It makes me wonder, too, when we come back, what percentage of kids do you think end up regretting the choice? Right? When you're 10, if you suddenly get your genitals chopped off, how many people when they're 20, they're like, I wish I hadn't done that.
By the way, unfortunately,
that's a huge percentage.
There's a lot of woke cowardice in the medical community now, as we saw all throughout COVID.
Yes.
I mean, I'm furious. Not with the doctors who are doing their best, and I'm talking about the doctors who are blue checks going on TV and saying, triple mask your kids in school because I worship Fauci. The medical community is full of a lot of cowardice on this issue, too. They will not speak the truth about the long-term consequences and effects of this transition process and what the 10-year, 15, 20-year outlook is, Clay. It is bleak for many, many people who do this from a health and mental health perspective. And that used to be well known, but now we're not allowed to talk about it anymore.